Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to share with you two things. One, what is Rome, what is Notion, and what each software is individually best at. And two, share an integrated workflow between Rome and Notion and how you can set up your systems in such a way that it's seamless and it's almost like a mindless process for you to transfer knowledge, record things, write, manage projects, manage tasks, and so on and so forth using these two pieces of software. In my experience, I've felt that both Rome and Notion are best at doing what they do, but it's extremely important to recognize what each does individually best and to leverage each resource and each tool for that specific purpose. So let's dive right in. First, I'll talk about what Rome and Notion are best at. Rome is best for personal knowledge management, which means that if you're consuming any piece of content, or if you're reading something, writing something, or if you just want to put down your thoughts in terms of journaling or just recording something, Rome is best for that because it is essentially founded on the idea of network thinking. Now, Notion is different. Notion is founded on the idea of collaboration, which means that it's best at project management, task management, and essentially a life organization system, which is what Notion is good at. And knowing that Notion is strictly good at these two things, while Rome is strictly good at personal knowledge management, setting a bridge and a workflow which is seamless between these two software becomes very important so that you don't have to think twice when you're doing what you're doing about where exactly will a specific thought or a specific idea go. With that said, let's move on to the second part of the video, which is me showing you an integrated workflow between Rome and Notion. And what I'll do is I'll set up things from scratch in both Rome and Notion using some dummy pages and ideas and articles, just so that you have an idea and a feeling about what to do when you just see that blank page right in front of you in both Notion and Rome. And that is mainly the idea of this video. So let's dive right in. I'll first go to Notion, and I have set this dummy Life OS system, which is a template that I had made in one of my previous videos also. So if you're not familiar with that, I recommend just going to that, sort of just getting familiar with what Life OS is all about, just so that you understand the entire philosophy. So Life OS is essentially a life organization and project management system that I've created using two ideas. One is based off of principles, goals, and habits, which, as you can see, exist over here. And the other is based on the para system, which is projects, areas, resources, and archives. The para system is something that has been popularized and essentially devised by Tiago Forte, who is the creator of Forte Labs. And Tiago Forte is essentially the new age productivity forward-thinking guru. So if you're not familiar with the para system, I will link an article in the description below, which you could just read before diving right in. So because this kind of workflow assumes that you have knowledge of Life OS from my previous video and para from Tiago Forte. So assuming that you have knowledge about these two, let's dive right in. So the first thing that I'm going to do is create 3 pages. 3 pages that I'll refer to on a day-to-day basis, and they are about principles, goals, and habits. So I'm just going to do that. Principles. I don't need to add, well, I love icons, so I'm just going to do that right now. I have these over here just for my reference below, but the idea is to show it to you from scratch about what exactly I'm doing. Habits, which is this next page, and then goals. And as you can see, I'm just pressing the / key and just creating these pages. Now, once I'm done with that, you might wonder why these 3 pages in the first go. And the idea is simple. I think to organize life, or at least for myself, what works for me is that when I'm organizing my life, I need to base off everything of certain principles and values and missions. And as abstract or as archaic or unreal as it may sound, just having some directional tools or guidelines is really important for me, just to be able to build and customize my Life OS in terms of the things that matter to me most. So let's say for principles, what I would advise is to have a look at this particular link, which is a link that I curated by Ray Dalio. And Ray Dalio has written this book, Principles, and just going through that and understanding how he reached his principles and how we can form our own is something that I find to be critical and sort of really interesting. So once I would refer, and this entire process assumes that I'm building Rome and Notion and my entire workflow and setup from scratch. So assuming that I've read this after doing some other research also from a bunch of other people, what I'll do is I'll create 3 callouts. And how I create callouts is essentially simple. I press / and I have, so this is already asking me. So I have these callouts, and callouts are great because they demarcate the regular text which goes over here from, text that is important, which sort of stands out. So your principles can go over here and the description sort of goes over here. So let's say you have 3 principles set. It is just enough to help you get off the ground. And that is what is sort of important in the first go at least. So once you're done with that, then I would refer to goals and I would think about which are the goals that are important to me. Why am I creating Notion Life OS system in the first place? Is it because all these productivity people are doing it, or is it because something that I truly need and something that will help me move towards my goals in an easier way? If that is the driver, then it makes sense for all of us to have this Life OS system. So let's go to goals. I recommend reading these 2 articles. Again, I've gone through a bunch of articles and these 2 were the best in terms of just getting started with the entire goal setting process. So trust me, these articles are like really curated. They're not just there for no good reason. So once you've gone through these articles, what I recommend is creating this sort of table, which will be an inline table. And once you've created this inline table, you just title it goals. And then let's say this is your goal, right? 5,000 words by April 25th. Now notice that this essentially opens up as a page, and then you can add an icon to this, which is pretty random, but I guess that's not the point. It just adds more color to the blank page. Now each goal will be a page in and of itself. And then what you can do is you can create tags, which will essentially be categories of your goals, so that over a period of time, you can filter your goals by the category. And that is why having a categories or a tags column makes sense, which is exactly what I have over here. So let's say some categories just to get started with are academics, sort of self-development, and so on and so forth. So that's not that important. And then for goals, you have to look at them as projects. And therefore, again, I assume that you have read Tiago Forte's Para article, which I'll link again in the description. You have to know when is the due date or a deadline for a particular goal. So I will create this due and I will change this from files and media to multi-select. And then either you may want to review your goals on a weekly basis or on a quarterly basis or on a bi-weekly or a daily basis. So depending on that, I like to do it quarterly. So I'm just going to do Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to delete this for now. And then what I like to do is, because I don't usually use the goal page as such to fill in specific details about how a particular goal aligns with a particular project, what I like to do is I like to create a column called projects. And in projects, I will mention, i.e. cross-reference already existing projects and link it with the existing goals. So over here, what you see is that writing project is one of the projects that I've created for myself going by the Para philosophy. Now, once I've created that project has multiple goals embedded within. And I need to know for my clarity that the goals I'm pursuing actually align with a larger sort of meta goal or not. Because if I'm just pursuing goals in isolation, then it's pretty pointless, to me at least, because I don't know where each of these goals are leading me towards. And therefore, using Notion's inbuilt cross-referencing feature by essentially just writing at and then writing project and then just entering it is really easy, because the next time you refer to your goals, you can see how writing 5,000 words by a particular date aligns with a larger theme, a larger meta goal, and that, in my opinion, is a big value add that Notion has. And now what I can do is I can refer to this particular page, and obviously I haven't filled it out, but you can literally fill out anything and everything in this page about why you are pursuing the project of writing and writing well. And that is just of a great value to me. So assuming that we have created our goals now, not this one, our goals over here. Now I'm going to move to the third key page that I just created right off the bat, which was on habits. And habits, again, is something that you have to keep track on a day-to-day basis, but is something that does not necessarily align with a larger goal per se, but is still something that's good to have. For me, what I think works is not reviewing habits on a day-to-day basis, because then reviewing habits becomes more important than actually doing the habits. For me, what works is having this tricolor system in which each habit that I'm doing or that I'm following up on a regular basis would come under the section of green. Each habit that I'm not quite following on would come under a section of red, and habits that I'm sort of tentative on, I'm making progress but not quite, would come under yellow. And reviewing them on, say, a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, or even just having this habits page right in front of you in Notion would inevitably make you go through habits again and again, and that is a big value add in the long term. Because oftentimes what happens is when we use folders on Mac or folders in Google Drive or any other storage device, just the mere friction of having folders prevents us from looking into them, because that initial friction, that initial inertia is enough to not even remind us of the fact that there are many important files that we have created with the intent to review them on a daily basis. And Notion solves that problem beautifully by just making this workspace really accessible and beautiful for you to easily access a bunch of different things. So that's why I think just to start with Notion, having these 3 pages of principles, goals, and habits becomes incredibly important. And then I'm assuming that you have read Para again. So you would have created a bunch of projects that you have listed down in your projects. And again, you'll have an areas and resources and an archive section in which you could fill stuff on the go, the philosophy of which Tiago Forte does a really good job at explaining. So I'm going to leave that separately. Now, once you're done with that, the next thing you want to do is to create this sort of knowledge hub. And this knowledge hub is essentially for all the content that you consume, but you haven't read yet, and the content that you consume that you would like to store for a long-term basis. And I'll get to how Roam does a different job at managing the insights that you gain from the content. But for storing the content in particular, Notion does a really good job at just helping you store the content in a retrievable, accessible, and organized manner. And in order to create this knowledge hub, I just like to get started with tables in the first go. So what I'm going to do is, assuming that we don't have this knowledge table right over here below us, I'm just going to create a table which is inline again. I'm going to create knowledge over here, and I'm going to say copy and paste an article. So let's say this article by Nassim Taleb is something that I was interested in. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to see the article, The Most Intolerant Wins. Most Intolerant Wins. Again, I will create categories, which means this is probably, now I haven't read the article, but this article is about, well, it's it's about complex systems and Talib is a risk engineer. So yeah, it's about skin in the game. So it has to be about risk taking, skin in the game. So I'm just going to write risk taking, an interesting article, and any other tag that comes to mind. And instead of files over here, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to change it to URL, and I'm going to just paste the link over here, and I'm done. And I could just open this, add some icons just to make it more cool, add some notes that I read from the article. But again, Notion is not the best at taking and retrieving and sort of connecting notes from different articles that you read. Obviously you could take notes over here, but I wouldn't use Notion for that. And similarly, you could just, even record videos over here and then have another column which will be the type of the content that you consume, which will again be not of text type but a multi-select. So over here, this is an article. Another thing could be a video, and then I would link a video over here by, posting it in the URL section, and it's pretty much the same. And the idea of Notion is that you just get started and you build your knowledge hub on the go. So don't be daunted by the fact that just because you see a blank page, it's incredibly hard for you. It will be incredibly hard for you to get forward and move forward with the entire process. That's not what Notion is intended for. Notion is only intended for you to just get started with things and build your life OS and knowledge hub and all these pages on the go and on the fly. With that said about knowledge hub, you can obviously create more pages, but these are more or less of secondary importance. They're not critical for you to just get started with when you're setting up your life OS system. So records would be all the things that you have to take care of, but you don't usually refer to them on a regular basis. So your medical records, taxes, and passwords and other things, and contacts would essentially be think of it like a personal CRM that you can create. And again, there are a host of templates available, but the best way to get started is to just create a table, write personal CRM, then each person would be a page. Each tag would represent a category or a connection showing how you know that person. Then this could be a section about notes, in which you just write quick notes, and then there could be more columns about where that person is, what's the person's address, their email ID, and so on and so forth. So you could essentially customize it much more. But to get started with Life OS for two things, life management and project management or task management, I highly recommend just going through and creating principles, goals, habits, and following the para system of projects, areas, resources, and archives to manage life from the first 3 pages and manage tasks and projects from the next 3 pages. And just having this clarity and strictly using Notion for these 2 purposes makes a lot of sense to me. And that's why I recommend Notion for these 2 purposes. Now moving on to Roam. Now, Roam is the best tool that I've encountered so far for personal knowledge management, which includes journaling, which includes recording insights, which includes recording lessons, and just everything that you consume. Roam allows you to connect all of that and produce something new of value. And because ideas are more or less often seeing things in different contexts and applying them in different contexts by some prior knowledge, think of Roam as like an external mapping of all the neural connections in the brain. So to give you an insight about how this actually works out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick an article that I've sort of glanced or read before, and I'm going to take notes about that article in Roam to generate new insights and see how I'm able to connect different concepts that I otherwise wouldn't have. So in this case, I have Brain Pickings open over here, and Brain Pickings is a great curated website of all great articles about concepts of life, love, relationships, and a lot of other things like that. So in this case, the article is about the shortness of life, Seneca on busyness and the art of living wide rather than living long. And it starts with this quote. It's a meditation on the life of presence. Okay.
Seneca writes, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested. But when it is wasted in heedless luxury and spent on no good activity, we are forced at last by death's final constraint to realize that it has passed away before we knew it was coming." So all of this is linked to some kinds of life lessons or life advice. So that is the concept that I'm generating in my mind right now. So what I'm going to do is, let me just copy this over here. I'm going to go to Rome. I'm going to go to key insights because now I'm generating a bidirectional link. I'm going to write Command K this. I'm going to first copy the link of this article. This article in Brain Pickings was a fantastic read because it shares some interesting life advice. Now, the best thing about Rome is now that I have linked this particular article to life advice, when I click on life advice and I look at all of these things, I can essentially have everything everywhere where I have come across life advice over here. And that is a really fantastic thing about Rome. It just allows you to take notes on the fly and not worry about the notes being filed or organized at the back of the software. So think about it like how a secretary or an assistant would organize all your files for you while you just sit and do the actual work of going through papers, documents, and so on and so forth. So that's probably the single most important value add for me from Rome. So in order to give you a more deeper insight, let's look at this graph. Now, I know that this is definitely overwhelming, but it's good because, yeah, this is a bit hard to read at first. But Rome is, again, in their beta phase right now, and it's definitely not the best, most well-designed app. But for what it is right now, and I'm sure that they will improve, for what it is right now, let's look at certain concepts and see how things relate to one another. So I have something to do with thoughtful that I heard, that I read about on April 12th. Okay. Then there is CNN, convolutional neural nets, and CNN is essentially connected to all of these things. So instead of finding topics of life advice and just going through that, because that will take some time, I'm just going to take you through some notes that I had taken for this class that I'm taking. So I'm going to go to neural networks. I see everywhere that I have used the word neural networks, it comes over here. Then I go to feed forward. Everywhere that I've used feed forward comes over here. I've used it in CNNs, so it shows up in CNN. It shows up in feed forward shows up in CNN. So now let me go to CNN. Now CNN is essentially the master place where I start taking my notes from. So these are all the places. So this is where I've actually recorded notes for CNN in particular. And these are all the places where I have cross-referenced CNN. So let's say in sequence transduction, I have said that, let's say you want to translate Beatles are a band, the band did XYZ. The band in the second sentence refers to the Beatles. So what you want to do is you want to see that RNN and CNN are good networks for recognizing that kind of dependency. So therefore it becomes all the more important for me to have everything where I have mentioned the word CNN to be in one place. And that is just fantastic and really, really useful. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And again, looking at this overwhelming graph, I can totally understand why it would not work for many people, but Rome is essentially a programming language for taking notes, and all the other apps are sort of not that advanced. So definitely the learning curve is high, but I think it's worth the investment in order to sort of have literally built a second brain. So yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you feel about this workflow, what could be improved. I'm always happy to learn in the comments below or just reach out to me. I'm looking forward to hearing and learning from you. Thank you for watching.